Hello and welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos. This one into the Aries New Moon on the 1st of April in London, New York, Delhi and Sydney, but it is on the 31st of March at 13 minutes to midnight in LA. Aries is of course the first zodiac sign, so this is the first new moon of the year. But this month throws up a wonderful double because on the 30th of this month we have the Taurus new moon, and that means we have a black moon where we have two new moons in the same month. Now Aries of course is the first zodiac sign, so this is the first new moon of the year, so a real sense of excitement and anticipation as I am set to share this with you. I'm going to tell you about what an Aries new moon energy represents. I'm then going to share the event chart based on Universal Central Time, and that will enable you to see with the ascendant at 5 degrees in Taurus and where all the planets are distributed. That will give you a lot of insights, I hope, into what this will mean in a more detailed way. This new moon also embraces Chiron, the comet of the wounded healer, with the symbol rather like a key. Chiron's very often where we really flourish in terms of what we give to others, but where we feel that we get the least back. So that's interesting. And also Mercury is very close to this new moon as well. But then I'm going to go on and go through each of the 12 zodiac signs and give you in detail each of those so you can understand exactly what this next month will mean for your sun or your ascendant. Now, if you'd like to rise above zodiac astrology and that side of this broadcast, you can order your personal astrology forecast and character analysis and get 30% off. This is based on your birth data. No two charts are the same. Gain searing insights into your deeper motivations and talents and opportunities, but also to help you to manage the year ahead's influences. Please see the link below. Also, if you would like to get your free written daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, please see the subscription link below. Finally, if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you would do so now. I'm very close to that 100,000 mark, and of course I've had a lot of illnesses over the last 7 or 8 years, which has kind of inhibited me. So your support is greatly appreciated. So if you do click or tap that subscription button, thank you so much. So the Aries new moon is very much about freshness. It's about initiation. The sign of Aries is governed by the planet Mars, which is about action. It can be about fearlessness. It's very much about being in the moment. It's not necessarily about navel gazing and really worrying too much about consequences. It's about being very dynamic and direct. So that creates a sense of excitement, just that description, doesn't it? And of course it's a cardinal sign, which is also one of leadership. So when we put the moon alongside the sun, that's a very galvanizing energy. The moon is obviously very much to do with our more receptive energies. It's where we feel things, where we need security, comfort and peacefulness. Well, the chances are that we're going to want to in some way rejuvenate the strands that are ongoing, that are important to us, or at this first new moon of the new astrological year, which began on the vernal point, the spring equinox, we're wanting to be much more ambitious about what we can achieve over the next 12 months. And that comes from balancing the drive of the sun and the more receptive energies of the moon. So we get that unity between those two rather contrasting energies. Now, I mentioned before that Chiron, the wounded healer, is very close to this new moon. When Chiron's close to the sun in a natal horoscope, very often the client I'm reading for has got a big desire for recognition and to be someone who really can succeed and punch through any ceilings and really gain prominence and recognition. I think because the moon's in the mix, the moon conjunct Chiron is one of the most complex aspects to have in astrology. And when it's in the first house, one of the problems we can have, especially in the sign of Aries, as it clearly would be in the sign of Aries, if we're thinking just in terms of the sun being in Aries, it is very much about our identity. But I'm sharing on the screen with you now the universal central time wheel for this event, and you can see that the ascendant is actually at 5 degrees in Taurus, and that means this new moon is in the 12th house, and that's really telling. The 12th house, particularly having Chiron there, can be where we can feel bullied or where we can feel undermined by a lack of sensitivity and caring. And we do have in this particular event quite a cluster of energy in the sign of Aquarius, and that's all in the 11th house, very much in keeping with Aquarius, so very future forwards. And in fact, Mars conjunct Saturn can create quite a lot of frustration, but we've also got Venus pretty close to Saturn as well. So the collective, which is represented by Aquarius, is further underlined by all these planets, along with the asteroid Juno of relating, all being in the 11th house. So our noble desire to have some kind of collaboration or cooperation can be very strong from this particular chart. The problem is that Pluto, the planet of power, is right at the top of this wheel in the 10th house of domination, and it's forging a trine with the North Node in the sign of Taurus. Now, for me, this particular chart does point towards where we are in terms of the world's story. You know, we have the opportunity to work collectively together, or we can back off, and clearly with this new moon being in a very sensitive and vulnerable 12th house, what are the challenges? Well, the challenges are definitely that Chiron is more vulnerable in the 12th house. But the opportunities is that Jupiter and Neptune are very close together, and they're actually going to come into an exact conjunction on the 12th of this month, the 12th of April. And that could be very healing, but we just need to be conscious of being realistic. But Neptune and Jupiter being in the 12th house is also very much in keeping with their sign, just like all those planets being in Aquarius being in the 11th house. Interesting, eh? But clearly, Aries is usually an on the front foot energy, and the 12th house is more reflective. So for me, although we may have the desire to inject our situation with more vitality, more enthusiasm, more drive and passion, I think there could be the need to clear up something that isn't working very well, that we're inheriting from cardinal quarter 4, which began on the winter solstice, and that really had a very difficult set of energies. So I think we're kind of reaping the whirlwind from that, and this chart is asking us to work collectively, sympathetically, empathetically to those people who are having less of a good time of it. And we do need to be conscious of the need for healing, but with Mercury also very close to the new moon, the importance of clear communication, but communication that also dives deep and understands things at a more psychological level. Also, Mars is still broadly in a right angle with Uranus. That is also a very challenging influence. That came up to an exact square on the 22nd of March. The period before that saw more and more destructive energies being played out in Central Europe. So we still have that aspect there. So that really does create the potential for continuing repression or force used to dominate people's freedoms, which is represented by Uranus in Taurus. So there are some real potentials in this opportunity of this new moon, but there also are some challenges. But I think the combination between Venus and Neptune is rather hopeful, and Chiron's kind of saying to all of us, we need to do everything we can to try to raise our vibration into a place which pushes back on the terrible force the terrible destructive energies that the world has experienced over the last few months. Now, if you'd like to stay with me for each of the 12 zodiac signs, they're now coming now. So Aries, clearly for you, this is an opportunity for you to be very dynamic and really go with the things that in your gut feel like they make sense. But because Neptune and Jupiter are together in your 12th house, it could almost feel like you've got one foot going into the direction of travel that you're really keen to engage with, but another part of you is still kind of clearing up some loose ends, or you're still being rather affected by some kind of spiritual or psychological energy that's been very powerful whilst we had that big gathering of energy in the sign of Pisces, which may have seen you just withdraw somewhat and be much less outgoing. Now the key is that Mercury is in your sign now, and that's given you a lot of sense of urgency, but also a lot of agility, the ability to think on your feet and initiate things very rapidly. So that's all good. And I think with Mars, for you in your sector of friendship, but also future hopes, although it is in a conjunction with Saturn, that's basically saying to you, as long as you're clear about what you want to achieve in your future and you don't spread yourself too thinly, there's a great chance you can go for it. But I think the sincerity of your friendships is something that you're really thinking a lot about at this current juncture. So the energy of Neptune and Jupiter in the 12th house, maybe you're aching for people around you can absolutely, utterly rely upon. And if they're there, I think this new moon gives you a great opportunity to drive things forwards. Now, Taurus, for you, this new moon is in your 12th house, which can be about reflection. So when we have Mercury there, along with Chiron in your solar 12th house, a little bit of soul searching is possible over the next month. But equally, with such a gathering of planets in your 10th house, your professional situation is something that you're needing to really put your mind and energies to at this current time, just at a moment where you may feel that you do want to retreat a little bit. I don't think you're necessarily going to have the option. Fortunately, with Jupiter in your 11th house, your network of friends and associates can be extremely important to you at this time. But equally, this 12th house energy could make you more aware of who are the fair weather friends in your situation and who are the people you can really count on. But if you are someone who lives in a very earthy way, obviously your sign is an earth sign, and you know, you've always been a little bit resistant to looking at the more spiritual dynamic of your situation, this new moon is really encouraging you to do so. I think a lot of growth can come from Chiron being so attracted and attached to the new moon in the 12th house for you. It can give you a lot of deeper insights into your motivations and those of others you encounter. Now, Gemini, for you, this is a new moon that's very much to do with friendship. And because of the gathering of energy in your 9th house, in the sign of Aquarius, your ability to really galvanize yourself forwards, making connections to others, going on journeys where possible. And that's all suggesting that there's a sense of expansion around your situation. And I actually think that Jupiter and Neptune together in your 10th house could be doing you a lot of favours in terms of raising your profile, especially if you do work in a caring profession or something to do with healing. But the combination of Chiron for you in the 11th house could amplify any isolation that you're feeling around group situations, but also maybe it's giving you some insights into what you could do for your future personal psychological well-being. You know, you could be someone who could be of great assistance to others over the next month, but it is important to feed your needs as well. Now, Cancer, this new moon is in your sector of success, and like I mentioned in the intro, having Chiron very close to the sun is going to amplify your desire for recognition. Now, of course, if you're someone who's very happy in your life generally, and you have a pattern of life that fulfills you, and you're not necessarily goal orientated in the ultra sense of a cardinal sign, you're more interested in family and your personal interest and hobbies, then maybe the recognition needs to come for you in a slightly different way. But if you are someone who really wants to reach for the stars and gain that extra acknowledgement for your talents, this can be a very important time. Also, your leadership and management skills are often absolutely fantastic, and I think those can come to the fore now. Also, your management of resources is going to be important to that process as well. Leo. Now, of course, Aries, like yours, is a fire sign, so this is the fire triplicity. The ninth house for you is kind of redolent of Sagittarius energy. It's about expansion, adventurism, independence, being much more spontaneous and embracing more variety. Because you're a fixed sign, you don't always find it easy to do things off the cuff. People often see you as the primary influence, the most notable of the zodiac signs, and of course that's true because you're governed by the sun, and no other sign is governed by the sun, the center of our universe. So you do have an authority for sure, but working collectively with others or in partnerships is something that usually appeals to you, and this chart can help you to do that as long as the links that you've got are really good ones and will stand up to any stresses and strains. And with Saturn in the mix, if there are any weaknesses, they could be revealed. If you're feeling that a relationship situation has run its course, the collection of energy in your ninth house could point towards the door marked escape. And that would be something that some Leos may consider if you feel that something has really bumped along the floor, the bottom enough, and you don't feel there are any options other than that, because this ninth house energy is about the higher truth. So if you've been trying to get something much more constructive working between you and someone, whether it's a colleague, a friend, a family member, or a romantic partner, if you feel you just can't do that, I think there is the potential that you may want to break free. Now, for Virgo, this collection of energy in the sign of Aries is in the 8th house, very psychological. If you're someone who lives in a very practical dimension, which I think a lot of Virgo people do, and because you've got all those energies in the sign of Aquarius, which for you represents the 6th house, so that's reinforcing your need for organisation, discipline, being very discriminating in your approach. Now that's very, very helpful in that regard. But I think the transformational energies that are in Aries are asking you to think more of the psychological side of life, not just the tangible, material and practical side of life. And something could need to change. It may be about where you're most invested in an emotional or romantic sense. It may be about financial matters, about a business interest you have, an entrepreneurial idea. Something can really change of quite a great amount of substance over the next month if you seize this opportunity. And your ability to be very organised can be a great gift to you through these changes. Now, Libra, for you, obviously, all the energies in the sign of Aries is very much about relating. So if you've got a relationship in your world which isn't working very well, Chiron's going to highlight it, but equally Mercury gives you the opportunity to have a to and fro with the other people involved in the situation and have a frank exchange of views. If you want a frank exchange of views, the energy in your 5th house is about your need to express your individuality, and you don't want to dilute your individuality in order to just be a people pleaser. So improving relationships so that the other side, the other party, get everything that they want and makes them happy but leaves you feeling empty is not a result. So as ever, it's all about that pivot between what you need and what you're prepared to give, and I think that's really the emphasis of this particular event for you. But for some lucky Libran people, someone really exciting could enter your orbit over the next 4 weeks. Which brings us to Scorpio. Now for you, Scorpio, this new moon is very much about practicalities, and because there's a pack of energy in the sign of Aquarius, it may be at home that you need to make some changes. Will it be moving? Will it be starting to work from home? Will it be having a declutter to create more space? Will it be moving the furniture around? Will it be redecoration? Some kind of rejig along those lines is entirely possible. You may also be thinking much more about your nutrition, your diet, your exercise regime. All those things are definitely coming under the astral microscope over the next month. Sagittarius, for you, you're the other fire triplicity. So for you, this is house 5, this new moon. And that's glorious. House 5 is very much about charisma, warmth, affection, romance, demonstrating talents. You got it all to go for. And all the energies in Aquarius are giving you the verbal vibrancy and mental agility, but in a way which can see you persuasive, but also very determined to get across your ideas as you see fit. But of course, with Chiron in the mix, if your love life feels like it's a rather parched desert at the moment, you may be thinking, when is it ever going to happen for me? Well, of course, we have gone through the COVID epidemic, which has had a massively restraining impact on people's abilities to freely associate. So I think you've got a great chance to bounce back over the next 3 or 4 weeks, and where you can safely do so, to mix and mingle. And I think your ideas are going to be held in high currency. People will know that what you mean is what you say, but also you can be great fun and really quite stimulating to be around over the next 4 weeks. And I think your popularity is going to really take a leap. Capricorn, for you, the new moon is in house 4. But having Chiron on the moon in house 4 is incredibly tender. And because you've got your ruler in house 2, the sector of self-worth, and it is quite close to Mars and also Venus, if you feel that your financial or emotional situation is not as secure as you would like at the moment, I think the next 4 weeks could be a little challenging in some ways, because you're being asked to get in touch with your vulnerabilities, something that many of us are not necessarily particularly keen to do. But if you are prepared to embrace those, actually it can be a very constructive thing, because Chiron can pour a lot of light into how you respond to situations, what your needs are in terms of your sense of physical and also emotional needs. But clearly, because the 4th house can be to do with where we live and family matters, maybe there are some constructive changes that can take place within your abode, which actually are going to create that greater sense of peace and tranquility and safety that's at the core of all our basic needs. So very important next 3 or 4 weeks for your sign. Now, Aquarius, life's going to be going at quite a speedy pace at the moment, because you've got that big pack of energy in your sign, but most importantly Mars. Because Saturn's so close by, if things aren't going quite at the pace you want, it can feel like you're driving with the handbrake on. But don't underestimate how your unique individuality and also your ability to really understand what you believe in and express that, your sense of expression can be enriched by this new moon in quite a considerable way. This could link you to new people, fresh ideas, greater exposure to technology or the community or neighbours, or perhaps even some kind of greater connection to a sibling, your extended family. And you also have Jupiter, the planet of growth, still in your 2nd house. And as it's alongside Neptune, your generosity towards those who are less fortunate could be quite significant at this time. But equally, however much there has been a challenge with the cost of living crisis, you could be someone who could be finding a way to use your ingenuity to bring greater finance into your situation. Now, Pisces, last but not least, this new moon is in your sector of everyday resources, self-worth, money, and also the creature comforts that we enjoy, you know, whether it's good food, good wine, the odd treat, that's very much represented by the second house, which is where the new moon is. But the second house Chiron influence kind of says that if you've got all those things in place but you're still feeling that your life is missing something, I think the answer lies in all those energies clustered in the sign of Aquarius, the 12th house. They, particularly Saturn, could be having quite a debilitating effect on your sense of serenity at the moment. And the best way to deal with 12th house energy is to own it. The more we try to deny our shadow side or deny the things we find difficult or we find fearful, the more they just control us even more. So if you turn around and look them directly in the eye, you can embrace them and then integrate them into you and actually emerge at the end of this month, when we had that black moon, feeling much more robust about what makes you you and what you stand for. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Please stay safe, take care, and goodbye.